Good afternoon, or I'm sorry, good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to the Wednesday, August 9th, 2023 informal meeting of the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Education. Just for information, the informal meeting is an informational meeting only. We do not take any votes, but we just listen to great information and great news. So first, approval of the agenda. I'm sorry. Nick, please.
Okay, good morning and welcome to our academic excellence meeting. We
Good morning.
have our two members who are on our committee today present, Ms. Connie Hall, District 3, and Reverend Paul Smith, District 5. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Okay, we'll approve by affirmation. There are no minutes provided for this meeting. However, whenever we have our next meeting, we will provide 2 sets of minutes and adopt those minutes in the next meeting. The purpose of the Academic Excellence Committee is to demonstrate how our schools and our school district PACE. And the acronym that I have for PACE is how they perform, how they achieve, how they comprehend, and how they excel. So it's not unfit to talk about the Georgia milestones testing on today, GMAS scores. So we will be providing you with a GMAS report, and we will start with our lead learner, Dr. Watts, who will open up this discussion regarding Georgia milestones. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for me to introduce our accountability and data team to come to the podium for this presentation. I love the acronym PACE. For me, this is also an opportunity to answer the question, and how are the children doing? We've had a year of learning from our scholars, and this report will give you insight into how we are performing as a district, but also this report is also meant to build your assessment and accountability literacy around what these tests actually measure versus what they don't measure, so that when you're interpreting the data, you have an accurate depiction of what the assessments really are telling us. So with that said, I'll turn it over and we will commence the presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watts. It is a pleasure to be with the board this morning and to present our Georgia Milestones Assessment System results for the district for school year 2022-23. As you all know, the Georgia Milestones serves as one of several measures that are used for promotion and retention. And this presentation will focus on providing an overview of the Georgia Milestones Assessment System. It will cover GMAS administration and reporting, being able to understand the achievement levels and scores that students receive. We will take a deep dive into those achievement levels and understand what each is noting about the student with relationship to the Georgia standards. And lastly, we will take a look at the district performance for school year 22-23, both for the end of grade GMAS results, and those are for grades 3 through 8, as well as the end of course for high school. So in taking a look at the Georgia Milestones Assessment System, known as the acronym GMAS, this serves as the state of Georgia's comprehensive summative assessment system that spans grades 3 through high school. The GMAS is intended to serve as a summative assessment, meaning that it's designed to assess the learning that has taken place over the school year. So it measures how well students have learned the knowledge and skills outlined in the state-adopted content standards in 4 core content areas: English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. The GMAS assessment indicates content mastery, otherwise known as the student achievement or readiness for the next level of learning, whether that is the next grade level, the next course, or entering college or beginning a career. GMAS also serves as a key component of the state accountability system, the College and Career Ready Performance Index, CCRPI, which the State of Georgia Department of Education considers to be a barometer of the quality of educational opportunity provided by the state of Georgia. On the Georgia Milestones Assessment System, there are 2 types of assessment depending on grade level. The end of grade assessments, EOGs, are administered to grades 3 through 8, and they focus on English language arts and math for all grade levels within the grade band 3 through 8. For grades 5 and 8, there's an EOG in science, and for grade 8, there's also an end of grade in social studies. For high school students, we have EOCs. Those are end of course assessments. The EOCs are administered in several high school level courses as designated by the State Board of Education, and they serve as the final exam for the course, contributing a set percentage of the student's final course grade. This is per the State Board noted below. When we look at GMAS reporting, it's important to note that reporting occurs per grade level and content area or course. So as we consider the form of assessment that our students take, it's important to understand that Georgia Milestones is an online assessment. So it is administered through a digital platform, and it includes the following features. There are multiple choice items in all content, grades, and courses. There are also technology enhanced items in all content, grades, and courses. A writing component is administered in response to a passage that is read by the student to which the student provides the response. There are also open-ended or constructed responses that are built in to the ELA assessment, and this occurs for all grades and courses. A separate reading status indicator is obtained within the ELA assessment, and that is the reported Lexile score. We obtain a Lexile score for all students in all grades and courses assessed by the Georgia Milestones. The Georgia Milestones also incorporates norm-referenced items within each of the assessments, and these are designed to estimate performance levels across ranges expected per grade level or per course, and this occurs for all grade levels and all courses. The importance of noting the fact that norm-referenced items are included is associated with the achievement levels that are denoted by the student performance on each GMAS, EOC, or EOG. There are 4 achievement levels that describe how much mastery a student has of the knowledge and skills outlined in Georgia's content standards. Beginning learners are those who do not demonstrate proficiency in the knowledge or skills necessary for grade level or for the course. As such, they need substantial academic support to be prepared to advance to the next grade or course. Developing learners demonstrate partial proficiency in the knowledge and skills necessary for the grade level or course. Thus, as they progress, they will need or require additional academic support to ensure success at the next grade level or in the next course. Proficient learners are those who demonstrate proficiency in the knowledge and skills necessary for grade level and course performance. Students are prepared for the next grade level, and they're prepared to advance to the next course. Lastly, we have distinguished learners. These learners demonstrate advanced levels of proficiency in the knowledge and skills necessary for grade level and for the course, and thus they are well prepared to advance to the next grade level or the next course, and they demonstrate readiness for college and career post-graduation. When we consider the 4 content areas, the one that is important to focus on with regard to understanding the components that comprise this assessment is the Georgia Milestones English Language Arts Assessment. So on this slide, we will take a look at the 2 components, the 2 categories that are contained within the ELA assessment, and the 2 scores that are yielded. So reading and vocabulary comprises 53% of the GMAS ELA measure. And what you see is in that demarcation, the number of points associated with each item type. And the end product of the reading and vocabulary component is that Lexile score, that reading status indicator. The second component of the ELA assessment is the writing and language component. That comprises the remaining 47% of the assessment measure. Together, those 2 components will yield the ELA achievement score, the ELA achievement level that will be denoted on the student's individual report. And the achievement levels, of course, will be related to the 4 levels we discussed: beginning, developing, proficient, or distinguished learners. Within that reading and vocabulary section, that 53% of the Georgia Milestones ELA assessment, students are presented with passages to read. Those passages may be either literary, so they'll focus on things like drama, fantasy, legend, myth, or poetry. Or they may be informational. Informational text may be an opinion piece, an editorial, a speech, a legal document, a little snippet, obviously from a legal document. And what students are then asked are specific questions about what they have read that assess their ability to understand and interpret that information. And what you see is that for the different grade levels, so to the right, I'll draw your attention to the fact that the percentages with regard to the types of passages received vary depending upon grade level. So for grades 3 and 4, what you see is that 60% of the passages are more literary, whereas 40% are informational. And as we progress to high school, that percentage flips. So by the time students advance to high school, we're expecting them to be more proficient in understanding informational text. So you'll see that 60% informational and 40% literary. Now, I know one of the questions that the community often has is, when do I get my child's result, and how do I interpret that assessment? So I wanted to give you a snapshot of what the parents see and what the students see when they receive their individual student scores. And this is a snapshot of the ELA assessment for grade 3. At the very top, they will see exactly what you see, their name, all their demographic information, the fact that this is the ELA assessment, and right there, very first score that is presented is their achievement level for the entire assessment, the ELA assessment. So that scale score of 454 is a beginning learner score. And the parents then will see a paragraph describing how to interpret what that scale score. And it also, if you'll notice the footnote, it tells you a range and what the sort of average expected score would be. To the right, you'll see there's a breakdown of the domain performance for the student and the different shades that you'll see. So if that little bubble is half shaded, it means that student needs additional assistance. We should monitor their learning in those areas. If we see a blank little circle, that means that's where really heightened focus remediation is needed. And if we saw a completely darkened circle, that meant they were distinguished in those areas, thus they have an accelerated level of learning in those areas. In the full report, it's obviously a standard page format. So right below where the achievement level would appear would be your student's reading status results. So that's been put off to the side so you can see exactly what that looks like. The student's reading status is the Lexile score the student obtained in the reading and vocabulary section. So remember, that is a separate indicator that's obtained within the ELA. The ELA actually yields 2 scores. So that reading status will indicate the Lexile measure, and the parents have the explanation of what that means, and they're referred to further resources that are provided by the Georgia Department of Education. Are there any questions at all about the ISR, the individual student report?
Can you please just highlight the beginning learner piece that is compared with, if a parent saw this in one place, they would see beginning learner, but then they look over here and they say their child is on grade level. That could be confusing.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watts. Absolutely. So what we see is that overall, within ELA, the student obtained a beginning learner scale score, meaning there's an area or certain areas of work that still have yet to be done. So beginning learners are those that do not demonstrate proficiency in the knowledge and skills necessary at the grade level. However, when you look at this particular student's score was intentionally selected because their Lexile measure is a 560. Within the range, the expected range for grade 3, that range is a 520 to an 820. So a 560 indicates that this student is reading on grade level, meaning they're proficient in that 53% that comprises reading and vocabulary. However, their deficiency and the reason why they're scoring at that beginner level is the writing portion. So that is an excellent distinction to make and to understand how would it be possible that my child is reading on grade level and yet on ELA they report as a beginning learner. Yes.
Yeah, okay, so this is great. You just answered like 500 of my questions. So this is going to be really short. So parents receive this.
Yes.
Okay. So are teachers reviewing this with the parents?
So these are sent by the school home with the parents, and the notification that goes out to the parents asks them to please follow up with the teacher with any questions about interpreting or understanding their student's score. Parents can then set up a parent-teacher conference
Right.
to expand upon this
And
with the
can I
teacher.
add that we will begin to be more proactive in how we engage parents. For those that don't set up the parent conference, how we might reach out to them via social media, short little video clips that give them an understanding of how to read it. So the district will also begin to take more of a proactive role through our communications department and how we are also providing information to parents that are not necessarily calling the school or taking that opportunity. So that's a forward-moving opportunity for us. We've got work to do around this.
We could also use things like our PTA meetings. Lots of times you go to PTA meetings and it's mainly entertainment, but that is a time, I know at one of my schools, Gadsden, the PTA turnout is fabulous all the time, but we don't tend to engage parents in this kind of thing, so that would be another avenue where we could really break it down, because this is kind of old hat to most of us, but for a parent, that would be informative.
Also, when you look at ELA, it includes several subjects within ELA, reading, writing, and English. So it probably would help if there were a grade given, like it used to be back in the days of old, and a writing grade. And a grade separate, then the parents will know that their child, their child is actually struggling with writing, as opposed to looking at the entire grade in ELA, and they're, passing, but you fail in writing, and it's not really identified on the report card. They
Yes.
think that the child is doing quite well,
It's all-
and actually they're poor writers.
Yeah.
And just along the lines, I'm glad to hear we're moving proactively towards how we educate our parents and our families on interpreting this. Will that include, because I know you send this home and it's this, report that comes from the state. Are we looking at also doing like a cover letter FAQ that goes along with that will describe the type of breakdown of those scores? Okay.
Yes. It will be a
Yes.
multi-pronged strategy.
Fantastic.
It won't just be one thing, it'll
Yes.
be multiple
Yes.
Okay.
opportunities.
Mrs. Bolivar, anything that you'd like to add?
No, except Dr. Howard Hall. We were sitting here talking about that. As an old English teacher, there was an English writing grade, and then there was a reading grade. So you clearly understood where a student was mastering the standards and which area needed support. That was really clear.
I did have one question.
Yes.
What is technology enhanced?
So the technology-enhanced items are ones that basically calibrate behind the scenes with regard to performance levels.
How would you explain that to a parent? Got to break it down.
So on those, so let me see if I can pull that up. The technology-enhanced items, it's a two-prong approach. So from a parent standpoint, what that means is the way that the items are presented are digitally to the student. So the fact that it's no longer a paper pencil assessment is really the highlight. Dr. Doe focuses on the community parent side, but with regard to the test performance, that the way that each of the items are scored within, so the breakdown of the points and the fact
okay.
that 53% are reading and vocab, that's the part that's technology enhanced behind the scenes.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to follow up on that, just for clarification. Part of the technology enhanced when we went from paper to online was their ability to do drag and drops and give students additional capabilities that you didn't have. So that's why they call it technology enhanced passages and items, where students had tools that they can use online.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also, Dr. Howard Hall, with regard to this report, to your question and your excellent point, the parents can really see exactly where the issues lie, where that further guidance, further support from the school, perhaps even engaging the assistance of a tutor beyond that, depending upon the student's level, that writing and language. And then when you look at that extended writing score, it tells you further in that argumentative essay, where are the issues? Is it with the language usage and the conventions of writing, or is it really just being able to articulate their ideas, get that main point across?
This goes back to say something Dr. Watts mentioned earlier, is an autopsy report, because at the end of the year now, they see that their child is struggling with writing, when if they were receiving this information throughout the year on a report card, they would know immediately that their child needs more assistance in writing.
Can you go over, you said this is norm referenced?
Yes, ma'am.
Nationally, or?
So they include norm-referenced items. They're embedded within the assessment. That does not mean that every single item is a norm-referenced item, because the way the GMAS is structured, and rightfully so, is to reflect achievement based on Georgia standards, meaning that the greater composition of items are in fact criterion items. They are associated with specific Georgia standards and skills and knowledge expected within. The norm referenced items are those that are on the larger national scale and allow for that standardization across the 4 achievement levels, meaning that those norm referenced items that are included are ones that align with federal educational standards per grade level, per content area, and they are designed to show you differentiation between those students who are achieving at the highest versus the lowest levels, and then breaking that
Is there
down.
any way for us to know which ones, to see how our kids do on those particular ones, so that I would know I'm doing well in Massachusetts and California, and not just, is there some way to know which ones those are?
We would have to be able to identify those specific norm referenced items only, pull them out
Oh, and
of.
they don't do that.
It would take an incredibly deep dive into the item level data for each student.
I guess what I wish is that we had a way of doing a norm reference with our standards, period. How do
That is
Georgia
part of their
standards
development.
relate to other state standards?
Yes, ma'am. That norm referencing, as it's called, the whole process of developing these assessments, it's done during the process of creating. So as you know, the new math standards have rolled out, but the work that went in the 2 years that preceded the formal rollout of the new math standards included the assessments, the revised assessments. During that norming process, they had to take items and compare them to national standards and do that referencing in context of developing the revised Georgia milestones for mathematics.
But there's no external reporting of that. Like, we
Yes.
wouldn't know, the parents would not know that
No.
that's behind the scenes.
Yes, yes, it's just part of the process that has to be done to allow for this type of standardized testing. Yes.
So this is fantastic. I've learned so much this morning. I've learned so much that I'm wondering, how can we get this out to the general public so that when the general public sees GMAS scores, they don't make assumptions like, pick me, I did. But is there a way that we can have an FAQ on our website or whatever? I love this slide because it shows exactly how the kids are graded. So, because I would love the press also to get this.
Well, the press will get it tomorrow because we're
Yes.
having a media briefing in the morning in
So
close
happy.
proximity to this meeting. But again,
Yes.
it is a multi-pronged strategy, and it's where I want to get us forward-facing as a district around how it's not just this meeting or media briefing, but multiple at-bats or opportunities for parents to understand and interpret this information. So that is where we are headed. Not quite there, but the media briefing will take place in the morning.
Thank you.
And as a parent who gets these, you get this.
Yes, as a
And
parent.
you get more information than you want. I don't know if that's the right statement. You get a lot of information, and then you have an opportunity to communicate with
The teacher.
the teachers.
Yes. But we'll definitely be happy to continue building upon resources available to parents and the community at large, absolutely. So with respect to the focus on reading, especially third grade reading, we'll get to that later on in our report. It's important to understand the Lexile score. So the reading status indicator on the GMAS ELA assessment is the Lexile score that's obtained. The Lexile stretch bands were developed in conjunction with Metametrics. So the Georgia Department of Education worked with Metametrics to ensure the Lexile framework that was developed by Metametrics aligned with the reading and vocabulary items on the GMAS. So the Lexile stretch bands are the text complexity, reflect the text complexity or reading level that students need to achieve at each grade level to be college and career ready upon high school graduation. So these stretch bands are designed to stretch students' reading ability and have them continuously gain literacy skills. So you can see within the stretch band, so I highlighted grade 3 because that has been our focus as well as the national focus. And you'll see the lower bound of that stretch band is 520, and the upper bound of the grade 3 stretch band is an 820. If you take a look at grade 4, look at where that begins. The lower bound is actually a 740. So you'll see there's an 80-point Lexile overlap between those two. So we're always stretching, and the reason why I want to point that out is we're always stretching. We're always growing the children. We want them to continue gaining literacy and becoming true lifelong learners and readers. So within the EOG, grades 3 through 5, and the EOC, the reading status is reported as grade level or above or below grade level. So they either are within that stretch band or they're not. Which brings us to taking a look at our district results. Before we start looking at the assessment scores for the district for school year 22-23, it is important to note that not only do we report comparisons of the district to the state of Georgia, but we also present comparisons with comparable districts within the state of Georgia. Our Georgia district comparison group comprises of Atlanta Public Schools, Bibb County, Clayton County, Douglas County, Henry, Muskogee, and Richmond. These were initially identified in 2014 based on the Governor's Office of Student Achievement School Report Card. And the data they utilized in school year 2012 and 2013 recommended the following criteria, which was used in setting our comparison group. An enrollment between approximately 20,000 to 50,000 students. So these comparable districts have to be comparably sized to the district. The economically disadvantaged student population should be at least 50%. Currently, as of school year 2023, Savannah-Chatham County Public School System is sitting at 69% ED rate, which means that we have to have those that are comparable in that rate. They also have to be comparable across other demographic variables such as race, ethnicity, subgroups for English language learner, and students with disabilities are also taken into account. So we were very careful in selecting comparable districts. The last time that we assessed this formally within the district was school year 2018, 2019. And there is data presented in the appendice that shows you what our current numbers look like in that regard. So, overall, the Georgia Milestones Content Mastery Weighted Performance is the first slide, the first information that I want to present to you because of that critical feature of the GMAS contributing to the CCRPI, the State Accountability System. It is the Content Mastery Weighted Performance that is taken into account. So across the top of this table, you will see the 4 content areas: ELA, mathematics, science, and social studies. Down the side, you will see the 3 grade bands. So the way that we report our GMAS result is consistent with the State Accountability System, which presents it in the 3 grade band model. So we have grades 3 through 5, grades 6 and 8, the middle grades, and then high school. What we see with the data presented, so the shading is used to highlight increases and decreases. Green will indicate increases in performance from school year 21-22 to 22-23. And the lighter orange shade indicates an area of decrease. So for the elementary grade band, what we saw were positive gains across the board for all 4 content areas. For the middle grades, it's a similar pattern with consistent, improved performance in content mastery across the 4 areas. And for high school students, we saw improved performance. We saw gains in American Literature and Composition for high school. Physical biology for those students as opposed to the other science demarcation, then U.S. history for high school students. The one exception where we saw a decrease from 22 to 23 in performance was Algebra 1. Yes.
First, I want to go back, since we have principals here, and ask them whether or not students at your school are aware of what their Lexile is. Is that something, Connie, what's your Lexile score? Oh, 660. Are they familiar so that we have that energy from them to try to improve and raise their scores? Okay. I think that's a very good tool to use to get them energized to help us. And the other thing, what would you consider, Ms. May, acceptable growth? I would think 9 months, 10 months. What is, if I'm starting off, at the beginning of the year and I'm in school from August until May, what is my acceptable level of growth, whether I'm behind or above or whatever? Would you say 9 months?
In terms of the school, if you're expecting sustained growth across that entire period of time, I'm not sure I'm understanding the 9 months in that context.
I'm saying if we're looking at this, if we see
Yes.
a year and a half's growth, that's phenomenal. What
Yes.
is considered acceptable growth. The teacher, if I'm evaluating a teacher, you brought these children from here to here. What, in one school year, what would be, I think people should
Yes.
know what.
Yes, ma'am. For the GMAS assessment, because it is a summative assessment, the content mastery is based on the scale score received and the weight associated with being a beginning level learner, developing, proficient, and distinguished. It's a different assessment. The question that you're asking is more aligned to our formative assessment. So when our teachers utilize formative assessments for the district, it's iReady. What they're looking at from that beginning of year to that end of year, ideally, you want 100% of the typical growth. So iReady also is calibrated, it's norm referenced, and what you're expecting is growth that is sustained throughout. So at the midpoint, you're expecting 50% growth, and by the end of the year, but that's on the iReady assessment. This does not capture years in that regard. This particular table captures the growth in performance overall for the district in that area.
Okay, that means that so many variables could be involved with this.
Yes,
Okay, not
Yeah.
just what I'm instructing in the classroom.
exactly,
This
yes,
could be,
yes,
shows I look at on TV, all of that goes into.
yes. And please keep in mind,
All of this is
yes.
stuff I think the public needs to understand.
Yes, ma'am. And I think that's a great point in that regard, because when we're talking about the GMAS assessment, we're talking about the student coming in one day to take the science EOG. So that assessment captures that student's performance on that measure on that day. For math and ELA, it captures performance on 2 days, because we break down the segments into 2 days. So it's very difficult to capture what you're asking, but what you're asking is definitely captured within formative assessments, and that's their design, to capture that growth, to map that growth, and make sure the students are on a trajectory to improve their scores year over year. All right, so moving forward, and yes, sir, sorry.
Just go back to that slide. Okay,
Absolutely.
So, so there wasn't, is there a way to break out proficient and above? Because
Yes, sir.
with this, thank you. Okay.
Yes, that's exactly
Go.
where we're going.
Go.
Yes. See? We are going exactly there.
Thank you.
And we're going to break it down into, so what you'll see is on the left-hand side for grade bands 3, 5, and 6, 8, the percent of students at developing or above. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the percent of students at proficient or above for ELA. So we will present similar slides for each of the content areas. What we see on this slide is consistently with regard to proficient or above, the district is showing increases from 22 to 23 in the percentage of students who are scoring at the proficient level or above. So there's a 2% gain for grades 3 through 5, and there's a 1% gain with regard to grades 6 through 8. But just to bring that home, because I know 1% and 2% doesn't really give you an idea of the number of students we're talking about. That 2% gain in grades 3 through 5 equals 161 students. 161 students within those 3 grade levels increased their performance and achievement levels to proficient or above. Within grades 6 through 8, 78 students moved into that proficiency and above realm. We'll look at ELA within the high school, which is now, of course, assessed as American Literature and Composition. And what we see here is that the district stayed steady with regard to the percentage of developing and above and proficient and above, whereas both the state and the comparison group saw decreases from 22 to 23. When we take a look at reading, Lexile performance on the GMAS ELA assessment, so reading at or above grade level for grades 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and also the high school American Lit and Composition, we see gains in the elementary and the high school, and we see the middle school staying steady. Overall, the gains combined are 367 students in the district who are now reading at grade level or above. Of course, our focus all of last year was third grade reading, so we wanted to pull that out and show you third grade reading results. We are very proud, and this is where I would like to commend our teachers, our central staff. Academic Affairs has done a tremendous job in addressing third grade reading at or above grade level, and we saw an 11% increase. Kudos to our students. They really did an awesome job becoming better readers, more proficient readers. So that is 301 students. That's a huge gain. 11% is amazing. It really is, from one year to the next. The performance in mathematics for the elementary and middle school kids definitely is commendable in that we saw consistent gains across the board, both with regard to those scoring at developing and above and proficient and above. The gains across the board really reflect focus and dedication on behalf of the teachers and heightened performance on behalf of the students. Algebra 1 is where the district saw decreased achievement levels from school year 22 to school year 23. There was a 5% decrease within the developing achievement level, and there was a 4% decrease within the proficiency or above level. Combined, we're talking about 270 students. When we take a look at science, we have grade 5 and grade 8 developing and proficient or above. And what we see here is both the state and comp group decreased within the developing or above, whereas the district made gains in grade 8, the high school physical science. We saw gains, however, that are notable in proficiency. We saw 5% at both grade 5 and grade 8 attainment level, and combined we're talking about 266 students who have moved into proficiency for grades 5 and 8. Biology at the high school level saw 1% gains in both developing and proficiency level performance. Within social studies, we see that grade 8 social studies, there was no difference in district achievement level between 22 and 23. However, the state and comparison group saw decreases for grade 8. For U.S. history, there's a 2% gain for the district from 22 to 23. Within developing for proficiency level, what we see is a 2% gain for grade 8 social studies, and there's no difference in achievement level or performance level for U.S. history for school year 23. Any questions before I turn the floor over? to Mrs. Ball Oliver, our Deputy Superintendent for Teaching and Learning.
So here goes. So I agree with you to applaud our team for the gains that we're seeing in the scores, and to our young people, our young learners who are
Yes.
making those things happen. I think this is a really well put together packet. I agree with our board chair that this is really informational from soup to nuts for people who have not done this full walkthrough, and for folks who have young persons who they've been looking at these scores for years. It may seem old hat, but for those who are not looking at it regularly, this is a really good overview. And one thing I
Thank you.
do, you're welcome. And then one thing that I do really appreciate, and I don't know what slide it is, but where you talked about the comparison groups.
Yes.
We are often describing comp groups in our data. We know what that means, and we know why different communities are selected to be comp groups, but often others don't understand why those comp groups are selected. And so they say, well, I used to live in so-and-so, and
Right.
there they did this. Well, you know, that's not our comp group, though. That's great, but that's not our comp group. And so I really appreciate the presence of this slide that explains why they're selected and why the ones that we are comparable to may not be intuitive to everyone. So I concur. This is really, really well put together, and I think that it has some evergreen information that people will be able to refer to after this year to understand what this means. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, well, I wanted to just ask my colleagues what your basic feeling is about us being so far behind the state in our content areas. What jumps out at you as a reason that, let's go back to that slide for a minute. Let's go back to the science slide, if you would.
Yes, ma'am.
So that even though, you know, we might say that they had a decrease, they were at 67% where we were at 53. What jumps out at you as a reason that we're that far behind the state? Any board member have any?
I'll stab at it.
Okay.
I mean, I just think there's a lot of stuff, a lot of information that you don't have, a lot of confounding factors that you don't get to know when you're comparing the entire state to a community that we know very well. One, the distribution of other educational options and what models they are experiencing to meet these literacy goals that we don't know what they're using. Like, for example, one of the questions, and I think our chair has been really pushing that we present charter data and our neighborhood and our choice school data the same. And he asked recently, why do we present that differently? And I'm waiting on the answer, as are you. But when I saw you ask that question, my thought was, because we don't have control of their pedagogical model. Like, we present the data that can be grouped by how we teach. And then they have another teaching model that they develop their whole charter school around. So in my estimation, that's why those data have been presented differently, because they're not completely comparable. So in looking at the difference in the state, there are communities in the state where the educational options are few and the number of learners are fewer, and so a model is being used and they're doing well. There may be others where there's economic factors. It's just, it's
So let
hard
me
for
ask you
me
this,
to
Dion.
to
What then
say.
could we do? Supposedly, the reason that charter schools are in existence is because they're to help the mothership with all of these different innovations that they have been able to come up with, because they don't have all the restrictions we have.
That's what
one
you
of the
thought?
basic. That was what I was told when I first voted for my first charter school. Yes, that's what the aspiration was. But what I'm saying is, I guess, what can we do to find out what some more of these models and things are, so that we can bring them and apply them to ourselves, you know, regardless of the size of the place or whatever. If they have a methodology, if they have a plan, if they do something special in the training of their teachers, whatever it is, let's adopt it. Let's get it and try to apply it. I guess that's
Okay, so I'm
that's
going to
my
answer
thought.
and then I'm going to be quiet.
Me too.
I didn't think that the charter schools were obligated to bring their shuttle back to the mothership.
no.
And before everybody starts, but look, we should. So that's my opinion.
Somebody who's been on the board longer than you too. What do you think?
He's like, please don't put, but let me answer, don't let you pull in, Sean.
This is a great conversation for next week at our retreat.
Yes. Okay, so first, I don't want anybody writing me saying, oh, that Dion, she's against charter schools. That is not true. I think charter schools say we have a model, we're going to use it. We hope you learn from us. I didn't think that they were supposed to be coming back to us with that, but I do think part of our relationship is to engage, pay attention, and learn from them.
Absolutely.
I don't think that we're not outsourcing to them. They're saying, we have this way we want to use this way. We're going to show you this way it works. And I think the communication is facilitated. And then the other part of your question, I forgot, but I said I was going to be quiet. And Dr. Watts wanted to.
Well, I will let Board Member Smith ask his question, but I was going to say, we need to unpack successes at charter schools, but we also have some of our own internal successes. Schools that are defying the odds, schools that are also, you're seeing data in the aggregate, but we actually have models of success, classrooms of success within our own district. I believe we do not spend enough time as a district unpacking success. We spend a lot of time talking about problems, but we don't often codify what's working. And so as Board Member Smith is getting ready to ask his question, I want to key up our principles that we have, because these are some of the models today that we can also learn from in addition to the charter schools in our ecosystem. Ask your question while I tee them up.
Oh, okay. I thought y'all were ready to go.
I want to make
Quick
sure your
question for you. I want to ask two questions. One of them might be extreme to the other side, but I think I have a good reason for asking. But my first question is this. I know we put a lot of emphasis around the reading scores. I would like to know, what are we doing to, or can you mention a couple of things that we're doing to enhance mathematics?
I think that's my cue. So good morning, and we'll talk specifically about those action items, things we're doing, but to speak to the question specifically to science and some of the things that are occurring, some of what you see in those fifth grade scores too may have to do with scheduling. And if you notice that one of the recommendations from our literacy task force, we revisited how we schedule our schools so that you see that there's dedicated time every day in elementary school as it relates to science and social studies. So one best practice and strategy that we've recognized, and also some of the resources you'll see as we go through what our action steps are that support that. But our first and our best strategy, some of which are sitting in the audience, are our principals and our teachers. That's where it all begins. And then we have the privilege as a division of academic affairs to push in and support them based on the data, not just their summative data, but the formative data that they're collecting, and based on what they share with us. So we have specialists, we have content area persons who get to walk with academic coaches and teachers, and then we have associates and senior officers that serve as coaches, and they walk poolside with principals. So you have leader moves happening in the building, you have teacher moves happening in the building, and those are the persons that make it happen for students, and we're just privileged to be a part of that. Some of the other items that you will see here is that we have a structured and strategies-based literacy approach, and we've talked about that, and it is aligned to the science of reading. We're exploring putting into place our letters training, which will impact teachers, administrators, and building a cadre of trainers in our own district. We also have looked at really great reading, which is very much a science of reading foundational training that might be more appropriate for grades 6 through 8 as they enter that area, and then Lexile specifically, and you'll hear about that again, for grades 9 through 12. There's teacher training and administrator training, and they've both gone through that now and are implementing. And then I referenced our schedule earlier, the 120 minutes of literacy in elementary, as well as the 90-minute block in middle and high school. And of course, our differentiated instructional groups, our intervention blocks that support our students throughout the day, not just with remediation, but also with acceleration. So Dr. May talked about that stretch band when we're looking at Lexile scores, and that dig time is there also to help push students and stretch them in terms of their Lexile level as well. And then, of course, thank you to the board for our additional early intervention program teachers and our remedial intervention program teachers. And basically, those are our teachers that are supporting literacy in grades K through 8, most of whom have been hired and are in place working in schools. And our team from the district level worked with those schools to ensure those teachers are scheduled to support literacy instruction. As it relates to the question regarding mathematics, we have full implementation this year of Georgia's K through 12 mathematics standards. And we recognize that that is going to be a challenge because the state has changed the math standards. So we provided professional learning starting last year for all of our K-12 teachers, administrators, and instructional support personnel. And we are using the manipulatives as well as the framework for statistical reasoning. All are receiving professional learning for all grade levels and courses in that area. And we're conducting instructional rounds so that we are consistently and constantly providing feedback for our teachers and leaders. And most recently, on a couple of state calls, we've been asked to share our model for how we're rolling out the math standards and ensuring that everyone is included, the teachers, administrators, and instructional support personnel as well. We have developed K-12 assessments and checkpoints that are aligned to the new state standards. We had a team of dedicated teachers that did that this summer. So we did not rely on just the division to do that. We called in teachers from across schools who actually did the work this summer. They did that in all grade levels. They also did that for ELA, science, and social studies. And then our team is facilitating instructional planning at school sites so that they're working with teachers to develop lesson plans that are aligned to the new instructional design for mathematics. And if you note here, the new instructional design is to engage, explore, apply, and reflect. As it relates to science and social studies, I think I referenced some of the resources that we're using, the science weeklies as well as the social studies weeklies in grades K-5. Professional learning has occurred with those teachers so that they understand the alignment and how they are to use these tools to help expand vocabulary, and a focus on use of nonfiction text, because that is some of where we tend to see the gap, especially in our earlier grades, as well as in our high school. It's reading and grappling with that nonfictional text. Also, we're enhancing our professional learning as it relates to the 5E instructional model for science. And we have performance tasks that have a literacy and skills foundation for grades 6 through 12, and we continue with our implementation of spiral reviews in science for those grades as well. We're focusing on the C3 framework for inquiry-based instruction in grades K-5 as it relates to social studies, and we expand the DBQ model that we've been using as well. And so those are some of our content-specific next steps, action items that we're doing. And of course, always looking at best practices, the schools pairing them up and learning from each other, especially those teachers that have become model teachers with the data.
I would love to have our principals come up now. I think everybody's eager to hear from them and the successes for this year.
Tell you who we have with us, and we have a lot of schools that have great success stories. So as we bring up the 3 that were chosen, please note that across the district we have a lot of principals, because I really want to get that plug in because they're going to be watching this. But I just wanted to point out that we have schools that exceeded the 50% proficiency rate on GMAS. I know that was a question or comment. We have elementary schools like May Howard, Jacob G. Smith, Marsh Point. Some of our K-8 schools that succeeded would be Esther F. Garrison, Godley Station, as well as Hess K-8. Coastal Middle School, Southwest Middle School, and STEM Academy at Bartlett. And our high schools include Savannah Arts, Savannah Early College, Islands, and Woodville Tompkins. So wanted to mention all of those schools that exceeded that 50% proficiency rate on last year's GMAS. And today, representing all of their colleagues, we have Dr. Yvette Wells, who hailed from Hodge Elementary School. She had a 13% gain in grades 3 through 5, reading at or above grade level. She moved to 50% proficiency at or above grade level. We have from the South Side, Miss Rachel Hirsch, Georgetown K-8. She had an 8% gain in grades 3 through 5, reading at or above the grade level, moving to 61%, and she had a 14% gain reading at or above grade level in her middle grades 6 through 8. And rounding out high school, coming to the podium, 9 through 12 is Mr. McGuire, 85% reading at or above as measured by the American Literature Assessment for grades 9 through 12, specifically 11th graders. So I'm going to ask them to come up and just share some of the strategies and the work that they did in their building, because that's where it really happens.
Because I had 2 questions, I want to throw no, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. I don't, as you all come, I don't want to miss this question. And I ask it because I believe that the community needs to hear this answer or this topic at this moment. With the changes to history in Florida, is it possible for us to discuss or touch on what we teach here in Savannah, Georgia, in the Savannah-Chatham County Public School Systems as it relates to history, social studies, Black history? Can we touch on that just a bit for the record?
So what I would like to share is that we received no information from the state as it relates to changing our Georgia standards regarding U.S. history or Georgia history in terms of instruction. The most recent guidance that we received from the state is related to economics and how those courses are structured. So parents can visit our website, they can visit the state website, and they will see there all of the standards K through 12 that are addressed through our social sciences courses.
Awesome. Okay. We teach history as it happened. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Wells, previously at Hodge Elementary School, so I'm here to share some of the strategies that contribute to the growth that we had at Hodge. One of those strategies is the consistency in instructional practices and monitoring those practices. During our weekly collaborative planning sessions, we plan with a heavy focus on instructional strategies teachers can use to teach the standards. Academic coaches provided support and ensured that the instruction and tasks were aligned to the standard and provided the appropriate level of rigor based on the student's grade level and the instructional level. We also planned out the engagement strategies that teachers would use during instruction using the Teach Like a Champion techniques. We monitor the use of the instructional strategies and enhancement strategies and provided growth feedback to our teachers. Secondly, we use iReady with fidelity, which is aligned to the rigor of the standard, to consistently ensure that our students were exposed to the learning tasks that provided rigor. We use our iReady instructional resource for Tier 1 instruction at grade level and the the personalized learning path in iReady to provide a Tier 2 instructional support to our students not performing at grade level based on their iReady diagnostics. Additionally, the utilization of our district learning specialists working with our academic coaches, our teachers, and our students. We had weekly scheduled meetings to provide support. They came in weekly to provide support with our academic coaches. They worked with small groups of students on foundational skills, as well as provided professional development and support with the implementation of teacher clarity, which includes the constant practice of deconstructing the standard with the students and identifying the learning intentions and our success criteria of each lesson. This practice provided a clear understanding of what students were to learn, know, and be able to do during each lesson. Those are just a few strategies that we use at Hodge Elementary that help contribute to our growth. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning, everybody. So Georgetown K-8 is just the best school in all of Savannah, and I hope my teachers hear me say that. We have an amazing staff there. My assistant principal is an instructional leader. She jumps right in there with us. Our teachers are leaders in instruction and education. And we really are a team. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we're doing at Georgetown is that we're a team. And so when we see someone shine, they really, they step into that role of professional learning and modeling the strategies that they use. Three main strategies that we focus on that's universal throughout our building. We also are using Teach Like a Champion. We love Teach Like a Champion strategies. We're very reflective the year before on what strategies are we going to utilize for the next year. We make sure that we're choosing strategies. We don't want to bombard our teachers with too much, so we select 6 that we utilize throughout the year. We make sure that we're choosing strategies that focus on building classroom and therefore school culture, but also focus on rigor of instruction within the classroom. Very first day of school, when we come back, myself and my assistant principal, we model those strategies for our teachers. We want them to see that we're not going to ask them to do anything that we are not willing to do ourselves, and we model parity, co-teaching, very first day back. Alongside us, we had 5 teachers on the first day back to school who modeled instructional strategies that they really shined in the previous year. And learning from your peers is very powerful, and watching your principal and assistant principal and your academic coaches doing what they're asking you to do is very powerful. In addition to Teach Like a Champion strategies, we also have very intentional goal setting. Analyzing data is wonderful, but if we're not setting very intentional goals with our students, teachers, parents, set the goals with us, and me, if I'm not setting goals with my teachers and my students, then we can talk about the data, but we're not going to see the growth that we want to see. And so we're very intentional in our goal setting. I spend all summer long staring at numbers and looking at domains so that when my teachers walk in the building, my team walks back in the building, they know I've already done all the legwork for you. Here are the numbers, here are the gaps that we're seeing, here are the strengths we're seeing. Let's capitalize on that and let's make a plan together. So we have very intentional goal setting. We make sure that we cast it in a positive framework. When we see gaps, okay, let's get together, address those gaps. And when we see opportunity for celebration, let's make a huge deal about it because we need to. We need to keep that go-get-em attitude in the forefront. So celebrate, be reflective, and keep it positive. How are we meeting our goals and what are we doing? One of those components that is very essential to that process is those individual conferences with our students. So after and I love that you guys were looking at the different domains of the GMAS because we too look at those different domains and we look at what is the most heavily weighted domain. So little Johnny last year might have scored very highly on the GMAS, but if that one domain is now a more heavily weighted domain for this school year, we need to have an intense focus on that because we may see a decline in his scores if we don't do that. So we're very strategic and very intentional in how we look at that data and how we share it with our kiddos, and we make them part of that process. So when they're setting their goals, they're talking about habits they're going to implement in order to meet those goals. And if we don't, those little benchmarks throughout the year, if we're not meeting them, then we say, okay, were you practicing your habits we talked about? Maybe not. All right, well, that's okay. So we know we're going to keep these same lead measures in place, but we're just going to make sure that we implement them with fidelity. So that is the second thing we do. And then the third, which this is something I'm very passionate about, we have a school-wide writing initiative at Georgetown KA. Our students throughout the school year will write an additional 12 essays that are not in our pacing guide. So every 2 weeks, they have a new essay that they write. I go in with my academic coach. I'm sorry, my throat's getting, I'm just chatting. But I go in with my academic coach, and we teach how to write. Every teacher in our building teaches writing. So our math teacher, she's teaching writing. We're doing it during our flex block or our enrichment block. And everybody's teaching writing throughout the building. We're making sure that we are promoting that as a school initiative. I personally sit down with my academic coach and we pull samples. My assistant principal, she pulls samples. We look at them. We find trends where students aren't growing. We take that back to the teachers and say, hey, this is what we need to focus on. And then they go back and they reteach it. Every grade level, it's going to be a different trend. So we need to make sure that we are going back to the specific needs for those kiddos. We know writing is 47% of the ELA. Writing informs our reading development. I was very proud to see that our writing scores surpassed our pre-COVID scores this past year. So we are very, very proud of our writing initiative. All right, that's it. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to come and share. It is really a pleasure to be here this afternoon. I stand here as a high school principal, but I also stand here with my fellow high school principals who do a tremendous job in sharing a lot of ideas and strategies that we've been able to implement, not just at Woodville, but throughout the district. I also stand here on the shoulders of the great teachers and students that reside at our school. They do a tremendous job of making sure that goals that have been set for them are things that they are working towards every single day. And so it is really my pleasure to be here today to talk about the deliberate steps that we took towards the success that we've been able to see over the past few years. As we navigated the COVID interruption or break, it provided us an opportunity to really reset. We really took that as an opportunity to come back and reset and look at how we were doing things. Unfortunately, during that period of time, we were unable to utilize some of our traditional data points. We did not have access to EOCs or EOGs to be able to look at student performance. And so we took that as an opportunity to dive in and to look at Lexile scores. That gave us an opportunity to see how students are performing. And as we took that opportunity to dive, our teachers really saw a correlation between student performance on Lexile as it relates to performance on state assessments as well as national assessments as well. And as we began to dive into that, we began to look further for resources that will allow us to continue to measure student performance. And it allowed us to be one of the first school here in this area in the district. And thanks to our academic affairs team that allowed us the opportunity to really model Lexile and use that platform to be able to measure student performance. And the question was asked relative to, do students know their Lexiles? When they finish with their Lexile assessment, it's right there, biggest day. They can see what their Lexile scores were. And so that was a really powerful tool for us to be able to do that. And so we wanted to build upon that. So the following year, we added one additional thing. We didn't want to overburden our teachers. We took great liberty at reading the burnout report. One of the things they gave to us was a number of too many initiatives at one time. So we introduced one initiative at a time. So it was Lexile scores was the first thing that we looked at. Then we began to look at the Teach Like a Champion strategies. Our students were returning back to the campus and back into the classrooms, and we noticed that engagement was something that we were really going to have to focus on for our students. So we began to implement the Teach Like a Champion strategies, and we landed on the Do Now strategy, which allows our students to focus as they come into the classroom on one singular thing, but it also sets the tone for the instructor. So throughout the campus, we implemented Do Now strategies for every single student, and then we began to expand upon that, even implementing what we call our elbow partner strategy as well. As we went into last school year, we wanted to build upon both of those. So we added our third piece, which was academic discourse, which allows our students to not only utilize their Lexile scores to further their understanding, but also marry that with the engagement initiative that we had set forth. And so now when students are coming to the classroom, they're expected to not only reflect upon what they learned, but also inform others about what they've learned as well. That became the expectation that goes forth inside of the classroom. And so we've been able to, with the support of our team, be able to go through and measure and see what that looks like for our students. And we've been able to see some tremendous results as a result of implementing some of these strategies throughout our campus. I do know that we may not have a lot of time, and we're very excited about some of the things that were going on. So I did provide some handouts, if you would, inside of these folders. It will kind of define some of the strategies, but there's also a QR code there that will give you some resources as well and some further information relative to that. And then my team would not let me leave campus without talking to you about our 5-year strategic plan. So there's also in this document, as well as a QR code that you can scan as well. But thank you so much for the time, and thank you for your support of our schools.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. And I always love it when we are praising our teachers and our principals and our students. And I hate to mention this, but I did notice that once again, the charter schools were left out. When you did your report, Ms. Oliver, you left out the fact that Susie King Taylor had a 47-point jump. You left out the fact that Savannah Classical Academy in their 8th grade, 100% of their kids are reading at or above level. This is exactly what I've been talking about. They're all public schools. All of these teachers, all of these principals worked hard. And anytime they accomplish like this, I want them all celebrated. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
Real quick, one thing I've noticed said in different words and different phrases, but I pulled out 4 things that y'all are all doing to be successful. Culture, rigor, collaborative working environment, and you're using the tools available to you. So I just want to say thank you for kind of saying the same thing, but in different ways. And I really appreciate all the hard work that y'all are doing, as well as your staffs and every principal and teacher and staff member of this district. So thank you.
Ms. Grabowski.
Thanks to each of you for taking the time to come and share with us. It's always great to hear what's happening within our schools. I especially appreciated your focus on writing, because that was one of the things as we were going through this morning. We've got this intense focus on reading, as we should, but I don't want us to forget about or to not also pay attention to those other areas, especially as students are transitioning to high school, where writing becomes more heavily weighted. So thank you for that emphasis. One question I always have around the GMAS, we all, we just spent a lot of time talking about it. Can you talk a little bit about strategies that you use with your teachers to ensure that we're not teaching to the test, but we really are truly engaging in deep and rich learning, teaching and learning strategies?
I drew the short straw on this one. But I will say, again, that academic discourse piece was a huge thing for us. Helping our teachers to know that they don't have to focus specifically on the test, but it's more so on the standard and what the students are expected to learn at the end of the day. I think as they walk out of the classroom, giving them opportunities to be engaged, whether that's informing others, reflecting on what's taking place in the classroom. I think that really strengthens and builds the learning and gives the students the confidence when they go into those exams that they're ready. A lot of times, you may see a specific thing there, but that's not what is assessed. What is truly being assessed is that critical thinking piece. And what's happening inside of the classroom really provides us the opportunity to really heighten the critical thinking of our students and allow them to be successful on those exams.
And I'll just add that many of our schools, I would say all of our schools, have an emphasis on something outside of just math and reading. Georgetown K-8, we have a focus on STEAM learning. We have a construction program. We have grants through DODEA for our garden initiative we have there. So we have a lot of different things that we're offering within the school. The data informs what the child needs and how we respond to it. But there's a lot of value and rigor in the assignments that our students are receiving.
Ms. Hall?
Especially to our K-8 and elementary principals. Miss Whalen, who was our former Teacher of the Year, she actually teaches writing at Ellis. And I wanted to get over there during the year she was in office to actually watch her. I didn't get a chance to do that. But I'm wondering if there's some ways that we can give our children actual more time on task with writing, if writing seems to be something that we have a problem with. And I don't know that all of your budgets and all, can afford a writing teacher, but this is an example like of what Dr. Hoskins was saying. If it's going on someplace and it's working, let's see what we can do to incorporate it at our other schools, so it's not that by chance you happen to go to Ellis, you have a writing teacher, but if you're at a school over here, you don't get that opportunity.
I will say that's why the structure at our school is that every teacher will teach writing, and the administrative team, we do it during our enrichment time or flex time. We make sure that we're teaching the teacher those writing strategies so that they can then carry it back into that flex time. And we have a rotation, so we have 1 week of writing and 1 week of math. And we rotate back and forth with those. And during those alternate weeks, that's when we're analyzing the data and reteaching with the teachers to make sure that they're able to go address the specific needs of the students. So everybody in the building is teaching writing. One teacher in a building is not going to be able to touch every child.
Well, let me put her name out there so we can find, because she's a professional at it. And I don't know how they're able to do that. And maybe every grade at Ellis doesn't get it. It may be just third grade, second grade, formative years. But if we have a gold mine like that, I want everybody to know about it and try to get, as much incorporated in your schools as you can.
To that. But I think that's also a really good example of where our principals know their schools the best and what, and are able to use. So the strategy that you just described of every teacher teaching writing works really well for Georgetown K-8. Having a writing specialist at Ellis works really well for Ellis. And so to me, I think it's inspiring to hear that our principals do have, that we have standards, certainly, but we also have flexibility within our schools to be able to best meet the students in the way that fits best with the culture and methodology at that school. So, different perspective.
Anyone else? The time is 12:26, so I'd just like to close by saying that we are extremely proud of every teacher, every faculty member, every staff member of the hard work that's took place on last year. And I'll be remiss to not reference our previous lead learner, Dr. Levette, to see the progress that was made last year that's reflecting this year. Also, I like to say this regarding Woodville Tompkins. You know, a lot of times we hear in the community, oh, that's a choice school. Of course, they're going to do well. But if you listen to Mr. McGuire, he talks about growth. He has high expectations for those students. So we have to hold every school accountable, regardless of whether they're a choice school or not, because he's showing continuous growth, and we're very proud of that. And I must say I'm very proud of Georgetown's success and extremely proud of those sixth grade language arts scholars. I happen to know the teacher quite well that's over there. And when I saw those results, I flipped out. I was like, oh, wow. But it's teamwork. And when you talked about writing across the curriculum, that's what it's all about. Because in science, they should be writing. They should be writing in social studies. And at every aspect, they should be writing. And great job over at Hodge. And I'm very pleased to know that now she's in District 8 at Rice Creek. And we're looking forward to see the continued growth over there, too. And as I often say, the acronym I always talk about is CPR. And educators must know CPR to be successful. Curriculum, what they're teaching, pedagogy, how they're teaching it. But the most important piece of all, and I always say this, is relationship. And with those three, the children will continue to survive. So if there's not any more questions or comments, I'm going to turn this back over into the hands of our president, Mr. Moss. Thank you.
Very much. I will, before we do that, Mr. McGuire, this is so impressive. I was at your event a few weeks ago, and for a school to have a strategic plan, wow. Great job. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will now accept a motion to adjourn. Motion seconded?
Second.
All in favor? Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to end this day. I will accept a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, real estate, legal, and related matters.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.